Welcome back to the Badass CEO. This is Mimi, and today we have Angela Leet, and she's the CEO of Leet Company. Is it Leet Co? Leet
Aleet
Co.
Co.
Leet
Like
and then Co.
Aleet Co.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let me start it. Okay, welcome back to the Badass CEO. This is Mimi, and today we have Angela Leet from Aleet Co. With over 20 years of industry experience, Angela is the founder and CEO of Aleet Co., a full-service construction management company located in her hometown, Louisville, Kentucky. Her company facilitates both design and construction by organizing people, material, and equipment. Angela is also a first-generation college graduate who then went on to earn a Master of Engineering and a Master of Business Administration. Beyond her business, Angela's career is a community leader dedicated to helping others achieve and give back to her hometown. In 2018, she was the first female mayoral candidate on the general ballot ever in Louisville, Kentucky. Thank you so much, Angela, for coming on today.
So excited to be here, Mimi. Thank you for asking.
Yay. So I would love for you to just start out and talk about your background and how you started Aleet Co.
Okay. I think life is always an adventure, right? If you go back to the core of it. And I was thinking about what kind of questions you might ask and thought, okay, she's going to ask how I started it. How did it happen? And I think a lot of times things happen on the basis of your circumstances, but by what's set before you and what can you do with that. It's that whole, I hate to use cliche, but that's the easiest thing sometimes is to say, make lemonade with lemons. And I certainly didn't have lemons to start with, but just the idea of, it was kind of started back when I was transitioning from a corporate world environment to motherhood to, gosh, what am I going to do next? And knowing that I had all this education, I was a kid who never imagined being a stay-at-home mom. I didn't see that as being what would drive me the most. And I ended up in a kind of a blended situation where I tried to start a company while exiting the corporate world, and then my husband also had a startup, so we were both kind of in a startup mode. And the dilemma is both parents can't work 100 hours a week and still raise a child. It's just not possible because I might as well have hand off the kid to somebody else and say, here, you raise it. But that's not what I signed up for. So I found myself in a position where I kind of had to step back from my own career pursuit, knowing that I would never fully exit from the areas that I had background in. So I started off after high school or after college with my master's in engineering, moving to South Texas and working in the oil and gas industry at a facility that was doing a $1 billion construction project. Now this is $1 billion 25 years ago. So who knows what that would be today. I'd have to do my NPV and figure out what my net present value of that number is. And, but it's huge. So we had 6,000 construction workers on site every day. And so I found myself working in kind of that construction environment. So that gave me some of the background, but I was also still working for a manufacturing firm. So it wasn't just pure construction. It was, how do I help set up the operating systems and the processes to make sure that people are complying with, in my case, environmental regulations. So helping them do their job while still complying with what the EPA and the state environmental agency, as well as local environmental agency, as well as local residents expected in terms of that construction project and the operation of that facility. And so that gave me some of the background I needed to feel like, okay, construction, I really have always enjoyed doing things with my hands, building. So when I was in that transition phase between the corporate world, having my own company, recognizing that I couldn't work 100 hours a week and be a new mom and be good at both, because we're women, we like to be good at everything. It's not okay to just be average at everything. We have to be great at everything. And I recognized I couldn't be great at everything because new mom is huge, new business was huge. So I took a step back and said, okay, I'm in a position, thankfully, financially, I could take what I got from my severance from my corporate world, take the options and stuff I'd gotten there while I was employed with them, and utilize that to sit back and kind of find my way for a moment. So I got involved in my community that I had been away from for 12 years, um, and got involved in Habitat for Humanity, which, if you know anything about that nonprofit, they are they're a great agency that believes in a hand up, not a handout. And so you work with partner families to build new homes. So I got to do my construction work while volunteering for someone else. And I got to control the amount of time that I was putting into it because I still had a newborn. And so that gave me more of that confidence, and I think part of the thing for women is our lack of self-esteem at times. And I think it's shocking that we don't even know we have self-esteem. We think we have a lot of self-esteem, and then we realize, wait a minute, why am I not pursuing that? It's because of my own fear, my own, overanalyzation of what are the successes and failures going to be. So then I started the consulting company, and one of my first projects was a commercial project where I was serving as a construction manager and overseeing, basically as a construction manager, overseeing the project budget and timeline. And I remember at this point now, was getting ready to have my second child while I was doing the construction project. And I remember just being, I always laid it out on the line for the guys. I'm very much an open book. And I remember as we started project meetings, and I was still, I was one of those pregnant people who barfed my guts out for about 30 weeks of the 40-week pregnancy. So I wasn't always the best person to be around, but I told him, I said, I'll be at that project meeting, but you better have crackers and ginger ale. And if I leave the room, close your ears, because who knows
That's
what's
so funny.
flying. And I laid it out there for him. And then even when it came time to do the punch list at the end of the project, I had my youngest son, who was only 4 weeks old at the time, and a baby born. And I was still, and I was nursing, and doing a finished punch list on and that was a relatively small building. It was 15,000 square feet. And it takes several hours. And I was in the middle, and I was like, guys, you're going to have to excuse me for about 20 minutes because I got to go do something with all of this. It's not going to keep working for me to just have this
That's so
kid in
funny.
front of me. All the women out there know, and if you haven't had kids yet, you will know, your boobs can get extremely engorged and painful if you don't pump them or let that child eat while you're going through
Right.
that
You
process.
can't wait too long.
Can't wait too long. And so you just learn to roll with it. And then, I was always just straightforward with the guys. I was always working with guys. And I remember having crying babies in the back of the car, and they're like, oh, do you need to call me back later? I'm like, well, it's not bothering me because I can build the wall, right? I can put it all around, and I can focus on what conversation I'm having, and chaos can be going on around me, but I can still have whatever conversation I'm having. And it's a trait that men don't have, I don't think. And I said, well, I can call you back if it's bothering you, but I'm fine. I can hear what you're saying. I can ignore what's in the back seat screaming. We're all
Right.
good here. So I think, just having, I had the opportunity to kind of tiptoe into it. So that
That's
was a
good.
long way of saying I tiptoed into it because it's what I like to do. I like to see the results of doing kind of that hands-on work. And while I didn't actually put up any concrete walls on that first project I did, or have to put any structural steel up, I was highly engaged in the process and knew who was responsible for what and what they were supposed to be doing. And what I didn't know, sometimes you go out there and you act like you know what you're doing, and then thank God for Google, because you can sit
Yeah.
there and research the hell out of it afterwards. But I think you always have to present forward that confidence and that self-esteem, and you can't let guys shake you. I mean, that's the part of, the guys might want to call me a bitch. The girls call me a badass.
Exactly. Hence
So
the
there you
badass
go.
CEO.
There you
It's funny
go.
because my 5-year-old one time, and this is how the name came out about the for the podcast, because I have a 5-year-old, and one day she was doing something. I was like, "That's so badass, Lily," and she goes, "I'm not a badass," and she starts crying, like thinking that I'm like saying something negative about her, and she's like, "I'm a good ass," and I'm like, "No," and I'm like, I was trying to explain to her, I'm like, "No, it's actually positive. It's like saying like you're just strong and you're taking charge," and so it's just funny. Like that's kind of, and then all of a sudden I was thinking about it that day and I was like, wait a second, that would be a kind of a cool name for the podcast. And like, that's how the whole thing kind of started. But I love your story. I think it's very inspiring because, that was another one of my questions is like, you're in a man's world, right? And a lot of times
Yeah.
men don't want to listen to women. I hate to say it, but it's true. Like if my husband asks the same question, they move a little quicker, or they, it's not everybody, but just there are some. And have you found that to be like an obstacle, or I think pretty much, once you got to know them, it's fine, you roll with the punches?
So I think I've always taken the theme in my life, and I guess this is maybe how people have come to, you know, associate with me, associate kind of that trying to be lots of times I'm just trying to be a badass, even if I'm not. I'm trying to be one. But I think it's like having that mentality of never being a victim. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of my first major like kind of scuffles right after college. I was on that, on that construction site with 5,000 construction workers. I was trying to ensure with a team, and I was working on a team. So I was one of a team of guys that were working to make sure that as we were constructing this facility, we were complying with all of the environmental protection agencies rules as well as the state rules. And I had a subcontractor who was out working on a pipeline that had it was an old pipeline. It had asbestos on it. They were responsible for removing the pipeline and putting a new pipeline in. They weren't following the procedures that needed to be done. So I went out there, and I remember to basically say, hey, here's the things that we need to do to make sure that we're complying with the laws that we've got to follow. And I remember him patting me on my hard hat and saying, look, Missy, we've got this under control. And I remember I was thinking, all right, here's my moment, right? Because you've got to make a decision. You either say, all right, this guy is scaring the shit out of me, or you say, you know what? I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to tell you how this is actually going to happen. And that's what I did. I stood up to him, and I probably hadn't been on the job more than 3 months at this point. And I said, well, sir, let me tell you actually how this is going to happen. I hold your work permit. And if you want to continue to have your crew out here today, you're going to follow our rules. And his tone completely changed. And then we had to have a discussion because he realized, wait a minute, she could kick me off the job site. And then I don't get to pay my guys today. I might lose the job because I get behind on the schedule. So he said, wait, I have to, now he had to make a choice too. He was either going to actually attempt to have a conversation and we were going to come up with a compromise that worked, that met everybody's criteria, or he was going to keep being a jackass and he was going to, instead of being a badass, he was going to be a jackass.
Yeah.
He was going to have to take his crew home. And that's one of those stories for me, kind of set a tone in my career.
Yeah.
And I think you have those little nuggets of experience that happen throughout your career that help you prepare you for the next time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had moved on to a new company and we were doing our first major like community open house. This is a chemical company. They're not known for being they have this reputation of not being transparent with their community. I had convinced our management team that let's do a community open house. Let's invite everybody in, let them see what we're doing, educate them more about how we do protect the environment while we're still producing this product, and what the benefits for the community and for the greater good of society is by the products that we create here. And I got management to buy into it. So I put a team together. We did this community open house, and I remember running around the morning of, kind of in a panic mode, because I'm still, I'm probably only 27 at this point, and I remember one of the management team, one of the plant managers came up to me and he says, "Okay, Angela," he said, "did you prepare?" And I said, "Absolutely." He says, "Did you put the right team together?" I said, "Most certainly." And he says, "Have you thought about all the different scenarios and plan as best you could?" And I said, 100%. I had the best team. We've put a lot of work into this. We've thought about everything. We've thought about the experience that the community member's going to have coming in, how it's going to affect employees who are there working, plus the employees who are presenting to the community. And he says, "Then don't sweat the small stuff." In that moment, of course, everybody says don't sweat the small stuff, but until you're in that moment and somebody really gives it to you and smacks you in the face with it, you're like, yeah, I've prepared.
Yeah.
I got this, but
Mm-hmm.
those little things that help you build that self-esteem that I mentioned earlier are
Mm-hmm.
huge, because him coming up and like just giving me those boom, boom, boom questions and saying, "Did you do this? Did you do that?" Of course I did those things. Female, I over organized.
Yeah.
And but he helped build my self-esteem up, and I said, "Yeah, I got this," and it went off without a hitch. It was a huge hit. In fact, other plants in the area decided to start to follow our lead, because we were one of the first ones to ever do it, and it ended up being a smash. And um, and I think we look for those opportunities, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't know when they're going to happen, those opportunities to build self-esteem. I try not to overthink that I have to live in a man's world to do what I love to do, um, because that would just put me in that victim mentality.
Right.
I look at it as if, I could do a construction analogy about a roadblock or a concrete barrier. You know, if I'm trying to get to point B and I'm at point A and there's a concrete barrier there, I'm going to find a different way to get around it. Okay, I'm
Mm-hmm.
driving in a car. Well, I can't drive through the concrete barrier. Can I walk around it? No, let's say it's 20 miles long. No, I can't get to point B because it'd take too long to walk around it. But by God, I could jump over it maybe, or so
Yeah.
there's other solutions. There's always a bunch of different ways to get to the answer. And so that's one of the beauties also of being a female, when they don't they tend to sometimes set the bar too low for you, right? So they don't have high
Mm-hmm.
expectations. So then it doesn't take much to bang it out of the park.
It's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So
And
I
so,
started out, yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I mean, so that's the beauty of it. There are times where I've learned to use being a female in a male industry to my advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I don't treat it as I put myself in that position.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have to be sweet to somebody, I can pour on sweet. I can pour on bitch. I can pour on whatever, you know. I can wear, my yoga pants, or I can wear my cowboy outfit, or I can wear my formal gown. Whatever the event is, I can show up prepared in the right outfit. And it's the same thing when you're out in the field in the construction. Depending on who you're dealing with, sometimes you got to put shit kickers on and kick the shit out of
Mm-hmm.
somebody.
No, it's
Other
true.
times, you're just going to take them to the dance, give them everything they need, treat them sweet,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I
yeah,
started out in investment banking, which was pretty much an all man's world.
yeah,
And but I've also been friends with guys my whole life. Like I just get along with guys in general. And so, I enjoy their company, whatever. But I think, like I was explaining to my daughter once, like, I don't think of myself as different, if that makes sense. Like, I don't walk into a room and be like, oh, I'm here with three guys. I'm super nervous. Like, my boss is a male and, the VP is a male. And oh no, like, I don't think of, like, I walk in and it's like, I'm a person and they're a person. So that's how I kind of approach it, I think. And that's kind of what I think you're getting at, is just have the
right,
confidence of like, you are this, there's no reason why you're not the same person as they are.
right. I belong at the table as much as you do.
And that's exactly. That's kind of how I feel. That's really interesting. So do you mostly build Residential or commercial?
M- Commercial.
Commercial. You're all commercial.
Commercial.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the hardest part,
Which
you
is
would
totally
say,
different because I think,
yeah,
commercial tends to be, I've done residential, but very only one or two little projects. And it's so much more emotional. And just, I'm not that real strong emotional female. If you want to call it a continuum, I tend to be in more on the, you know, male-ish side, tomboy, because now I was a tomboy growing up,
mm-hmm.
and I tend to be on that tomboy side. So I'm not attached to a whole bunch of emotions. I really have that engineer's brain that says, okay, how do we get to the solution? We need to be over there. How are we going to get there? And somebody might have, and if they have the better idea than me, I'm like, let's go for it. Let's do it. I don't care how we get there. I just want to get there. And if somebody tells me it can't be done, well, you can bet you I'm going to figure out, yes, it will be done.
Right.
It's going to get
and
done.
So commercial is not as you said, emotional. So
it's not as emotional, and you do tend to stay more in the male dominated side of it, because I think on residential you do end up working more with women. It's interesting. I say that women drive the economy because we're the ones that actually make a lot of the financial decisions of our households, on a whole lot of things. And it's interesting how often we're excluded from some of the actual dollar number conversations.
It's true. That is true. What do you think has been the hardest part about running your business?
As much as you hate to say it, it is a boys' world, so you still have to break in through that barrier to make sure that people are paying attention to the value add you have, and acknowledge that you can bring things to the table that might not be obvious. And I think sometimes that's the harder part, because and I think some of it happens, and you would know this from investment banking at times, women tend to be a little more slow in their decision making, and or more thoughtful, I should say, more thoughtful in their decision making. Men tend to, boom, let's go. And if it ends up being a total fuck up, they're not worried about it. They're going to deal with that garbage later, but they're going to start. And then they might realize, oh, wait a minute, I've started, it ain't going to work the way I wanted. And then they redirect. Women, I think, and I'll speak only for me, my truth is that sometimes I fear starting because I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there. And so I hold myself back, when in reality, I would have been far better off if I'd followed my instincts, if I'd gone with what my intuition tells me and just done it.
It's like analysis paralysis. You just kind of.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that's a trait that women have. And I don't know that it's not a bad trait. I think we just have to be aware of that and make sure that that's not what's keeping us from moving forward.
Right. Like set a limit, set a time. Yeah. Set a time frame, set something, like, okay, I'm going to give myself 24 hours and tomorrow morning I got to make a decision, or I'm going to gather all my information in, and whatever, some system or something that triggers when you're making that decision.
Right. And realizing that you don't have to necessarily have every piece of information. I think that was one of the biggest things I learned from politics, because you could analyze everything to the nth degree and still try to collect more information and more data. And then that would be all you ever did. You would never make any progress. And I think sometimes you have to go with what your instinct tells you is the right thing to do. And sometimes that's in an absence of some of the data.
Exactly. Wait, speaking of, since you just mentioned politics, I would love to touch on your run for mayor in Louisville, and you being the first female on the general ballot. Can you speak to that? I mean, like, it's just phenomenal that you did that and you got so far. And I would love to just talk a little bit about that experience.
So politics is also still a predominantly, I know we see a lot, we're starting to see a lot more female faces, but that's kind of a new phenomenon. I think that um, it's still a predominantly male environment. I mean, when you look at leadership, and I don't know what your state leadership necessarily looks like in terms of at the uh, state house, the state senate level. If you have a variety of women, I can tell you that in Kentucky, um, we're starting to see some movement upwards in that for women, but it's been a slow time coming, and I think um, it makes it interesting. And I think you certainly, to do politics, people are like, oh my God, isn't that the scariest thing ever? And I think you do it because you want to be part of the solution and you don't want to sit on the sidelines, and you see things that you object to happening around you. And voting, of course, is one way to voice your opinion about the things that are happening around you. But another way is to sit at the table and actually start to rake through all the dirt to figure out what's actually happening. And when you start looking, I always think of um, the Wizard of Oz, because when you start to look behind the curtain, you certainly aren't getting what you thought you were getting. And I
Yeah.
wish there was a good way to get people engaged in trying to understand the process more, because there's, gosh, we could talk for hours and hours and hours on the ways that things don't work the way they should, or the way that we would have them work in our household. As you make things bigger and bigger, they get more complicated. And so some of the stuff, because of the largeness of it, gets brushed under the rug. And really, that's not an effective way to do it. But it shouldn't be government's responsibility to do some of that. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I answered your question. We need women sitting at the table because we bring a totally different thing. What I don't want women to do is sit at the table and only be emotional. I want women to show what they can bring to the table, which is
Solutions.
solutions. They are more empathetic than men. So we need that they have that caring nature, and that nurture side of them. Um, and I think there's a place for that in government, and how how we operate government. But we also have to recognize there's always there's a balance, right? There's a moderation of extremes, and how do we get to that and create compromise?
Mm-hmm. I think the reason why people don't run is because they're afraid of being just completely torn apart by the media on your way of running. Have you found that to be the case, where they
Oh,
just dig into your family and pull everything out?
yes, very much so. I hate to say it, but as a young adult, as when I was in high school, I remember from time to time, and I know it's probably very unusual, um, but there would be times where we would be deciding what we were going to go do on the weekends with my group of friends, and in the back of my head, I had this little voice that would say to me, "Well, if you get caught, would it affect your political career?"
Oh, so you kind of knew in the back of your mind.
So in my head, I thought, okay, do I want that long term? And I just wondered now, gosh, what do our kids do now with all this social media? Or how would that, if I'd had all the social media back there, how would that have potentially changed things for me? Um, because we're all human. None of us are perfect, but
Right.
somehow I think the press gets to define what that version of perfect is.
Right, because it's changed, right? Look how much it's changed just in like the past 10 years. Like
Oh,
since Obama, like it was okay to smoke like pot, whereas like 20 years ago, that's it. That would have discredited you. You would not have been able to
that's
run.
right. That's right. And I think that's what we should be looking at more often is the character of the individuals who are running. Um, what is it that they want to add to the mix? What is that character statement is so true on so many fronts for so many different topics, especially now. Is what is
Mm-hmm.
the content of their character? And do they have the best interest of others, or are they trying to self-promote, or what is the balance? Is it, are they looking for what their next position is mostly, or they really want to be a public servant? Or is it a combination of both? And what's the balance? And am I willing to support that?
Mm-hmm.
And I was probably more worried about it from how it might affect my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you don't want to draw unnecessary attention on them in a negative way. And I think probably only a couple of negative things happened to me during the campaign. One, I knew it wouldn't take long for me to be called a racist. And sorry, but um, I was actually citing New York Times articles um, about a particular situation in our community, and I was citing New York Times uh, information as my source
Oh, and they
for
cut
this
that out.
position, but I was a racist. And I'm like, well, I didn't make up the number or the data. It's right there from the New York Times. So that was hurtful, because the individual who said it was somebody I'd literally walked miles with, talking, sharing our, parts of our lives, and trying to have a better understanding and perspective of their truth versus mine, and my perspective and what my experiences were. And then I had another situation where it's interesting, where I found out some information, and you try to pass it on to the media to get them to run the story so people can become aware of it. Because unfortunately, unless you have just oodles and oodles of money sitting around to buy the ad space to get it out there, which is excessively expensive to do, you have to rely on the media to report stories. And I had found out one particular situation that was really abhorrent of our current mayor. Couldn't get a single media outlet to report it. Not a single
Yeah.
one. And you ask why? Well, because they have a bias.
Mm-hmm. That's where Twitter comes in. Now you know why Trump Twitters all the time. Or
Right, because
tweets.
you have to find a different outlet, right? You can't call
Mm-hmm.
the press the barrier. And that's why people get frustrated, and I think that's what Trump found, was that he got frustrated that there was a barrier there. And he says, I'm not going to let that be my barrier for getting out what I need to get out. Now, does he always pick the best words? No.
No. Or the best
Um,
time, or the best. Yeah, let's not
no,
go
but I
there. But
mean,
anyway, yeah,
if you're angry and frustrated, we all say things that we regret at times. We're human.
exactly.
We're flawed. They
Yeah,
go
no one's
together.
perfect.
Human and flaw go together.
Yeah, we're not perfect. Um, okay, so what last minute kind of advice or tips that you would give another female who either wants to run for office? I mean, first of all, do you regret running?
Oh, no, every day. Um, I'm thankful I did it, especially as things have transpired in our community, and safety has deteriorated. Um, Division has increased. People are angrier than they've ever been. And I feel like I couldn't have averted it all. That would just be very hypocritical for me to sit here and say, oh, we could have avoided a lot of that if I'd been mayor. I don't think that, but I certainly think that I would have handled it completely different, and there'd be a completely different set of outcomes. And I strongly believe that those outcomes would be better for everyone in our
Mm-hmm.
community.
Mm-hmm. So maybe you'll
Um,
run again.
I never say never when people ask, and I've had the conversation with people about, well, are you going to run for mayor again? And trying to figure out how to help. I spend time every single day thinking about what could I do to help right now in our community, to help heal, to help unify, to help create conversation. And when people are angry, I'm not sure how we communicate with people who are angry.
It's true.
I've thought about it. I've tried to think about it in very, um, you know, when I'm trying to deal with an angry child. How do you deal with an angry child? Okay, if you're a mom who has kids, think about how you've dealt with them.
Let them
It's
calm
hard.
down, and you just,
It's
you can
it's hard
never.
to dissipate that anger, or with,
Mhm.
with a spouse. And when you get angry with each other and anger happens, and how do we get move past it? I don't know. Time seems to be one of the things that helps with that. But
It's true. It's like getting an
yeah,
email that
so
you're
it's
angry
hard to
about.
answer that question right now. Say that
Right.
again.
I said it's like having an email that you're angry about, and you just like don't respond. Like sleep on it. Give yourself 2 hours. Go for a walk. Something. Just calm down. Put space between it. Time.
Right. Anytime that I've had a really tough email, that's what I've always done. I've sat on it. To your point, don't send it while you're mad. Wait
Mm-hmm.
24 hours, go on a walk, come sleep on it, look at it again, make sure it's really what you want to say. And if it is, then hit the send button, because there's satisfaction in that too. Because
Yeah,
you got to
it's
hold your
true.
line at times.
It's true.
Uh,
Any last minute advice or tips for any women that either wants to run for a political office or, have a career or a business in construction or a man's world?
um, the easiest way to sum that up is anything worth having isn't easy to get.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Um, I think, I had to kind of reinvent after losing the mayoral race, because I had been on city council and I had to give up that seat in order to run. So I found myself, fully engaged at the table when I was on city council and running for mayor, to completely on the outside again. And how do I reestablish, right? So kind of everything got swept out. But then you start planning for, okay, how am I going to reestablish what I'm going to work on? And learning to be patient, and learning that it's going to take a little bit of work every single day. And it's not going to be easy work. It's going to be hard work. And you can apply that on so many levels to so many different aspects. I can apply it to, I had probably gained, I don't know, 20 or 30 pounds while I was running for mayor. Okay, refocus. I'm not comfortable being, I was like my 6 or 7 month pregnant weight, and I was getting ready to turn 50. So I was like, okay, I've got to refocus on that. So I got to go back and find that new balance, right? And then start to work and not be afraid of the work that it's going to take to get what I want to get. And if I'm not sure what I want to get, taking the time to look internally and reflect on what my needs are to guide me to where I need to go and what I need to be doing. So that would be some of it. That would be, that it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Anything worth having is not easy to get. My college degree was not easy to get, but it's definitely been worth it. It's opened a ton of doors for me. Being in the construction industry, not always easy, but I've gotten a lot of rewards and made amazing relationships and friendships out of it. You can apply that across every realm in your world. Anybody can.
That's great. That was very well said. I love it.
Too
It
many
was
words. Like
perfect.
a damn
No,
politician. We can't say anything short.
no, it's perfect. It really truly is. And I'm so glad you said yes and you came on. And I immediately thought of you when I put this podcast together, because when I met you, I was like, that woman is badass. Like, honestly, when I met you that one night, I was like, she's got to be on my podcast. So
That was
I'm
all.
glad you said yes.
I felt honored when you called. I was like, oh wait, cool. Somebody thinks I'm a badass, because my kids remind me every day I'm totally not.
Of course they are. They do. But that's what kids are supposed to do.
Right. And then someday
Um,
they'll hopefully grow up and realize, oh wait, she kind of is.
they will. They will at some point.
That's
Who
right.
knows when?
I keep hanging my hat on that. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep working on it. Because every day I'm not necessarily a badass every day, but some days I'll be badass enough to make up for the days I wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. But this is amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I had a blast talking to you.